Okay, so June is over and it's time for the video critique of our second theme, which was repetition of shape, pattern, or form. And this is the system I'm going to use again. First is, does it fit the theme? This month's theme of repetition of shape, pattern, and form is again another tough theme because it lends itself more for the abstract type of image or approach. It doesn't have to be, but the images that are going to be the strongest in regards to the theme are going to be about repetition of form, and that's going to tend to be more abstract. Aesthetic and artistic considerations, what it took to take the picture outside the box. And that's really what this theme was about, trying to force you to look for an image that you might otherwise miss. And of course, does it speak to me? And then the last consideration is going to be technical, depth of field, sharpness, those kind of things. Grading system, A means I'm jealous. B means I would be happy. C, I would probably dump the picture unless there was a particular reason to keep it. And D means this is not really usable. All right, so let's get to the critique. First image here is by Hayward, and we have a pineapple. And we definitely have repetition of shape and form. We have, let's see if I can get this thing to work. All right, we have all of these shapes in here repeating, and you could even go further into the individuals or the groupings, etc. And then we also have repetition. We have a pineapple here, pineapple here, pineapple here. So we've got repetition of subject matter, and it does have some interesting characteristics in here. This stuff back here, all this, it's kind of distracting to me. I think this would be a stronger image if we had zoomed in and just picked an area of better detail and move this more towards an abstract image. Maybe this area down in here seems to have more detail due to the lighting being more cross lighting down here as opposed to here is more frontal, which is killing some of the details up in this area, whereas down here it seems to have brought them out. So I think that we could get more interest in that area. We zoom in here. It's a kind of a noisy image. We've got, lots of noise in this area. Not a lot of sharpness. A lot of the details lost up in that area. Down here, it's better. Still not great. So this is going to depend upon what size we're going to want to use this image at. If we use it smaller, it looks okay. But larger, it kind of falls apart. So I think taken with better equipment and zoomed in on an area like this, we would have potentially a much better image than what we've got here. Let's go ahead and look at what the settings were. Well, it's a phone. I knew that. That's why I said better equipment. It doesn't give me any information down here. Now, some phones allow you to change the settings. I'm not saying not to use a phone, if that's what you have with you, or the quality of the image suits the requirements, go ahead and use it. But perhaps this could have been taken with better settings. I have no idea what they are. To an extent, this feels kind of like a little bit of a half attempt. Kudos for making an attempt at all, but Hayward, I do expect a little more from you because I know that you can do better than that. I give that one a C- in that range. All right, here we have an image by Peter, and again, we definitely have repetition. We've got nice, strong leading lines that bring me back here. We've got repetition of all these poles. We've got repetition in here, right? So, and this also works as leading lines. Unfortunately, they all bring me back to this area. They all bring me back to this area back here, which doesn't really do much for me in that area. So as far as a repetition image goes of the form, I think a different angle or approach to this, making this area over, making the poles over here the area of focus more, would work better as far as the theme itself goes. As far as the image, I really like this area up here. Nice use of framing, adds a little personal interest to the image, but unfortunately it's kind of secondary because of the strength of all these leading lines and repetition pulling me back to here. So basically my eye starts over here, due to the brightness and contrast and detail, brings me back to this point here. This is kind of secondary, it's dark, but I get here, so I kind of follow these back this way, and this area here I end up going maybe this way or stopping right here because this is very dark and towards the edge, so it kind of works as the frame. This area over here is lost. Doesn't really add or detract from the image either way, and eventually I do wind up here. Okay, I think that as far as this particular image goes, we could compose it a little differently, kind of minimize the weight over here and the amount of attention this area gets, and focus on this area a little better, using essentially the same framing. Okay, but overall it's a very nice image. Looks like we've got an Explorer. Congratulations. Settings wise, 5DSR. Really? I didn't even know those were available yet. Alright, 5DSR. You've got f8, 70mm, 1/1000th ISO 400. With a 50 megapixel sensor, f8 is going to be putting you into diffraction. Alright, so where detail is going to be lost. Now some of this could be due to processing, but we don't have a lot of detail in there. The colors are kind of washed. It could have been due to noise reduction or something like that. Also with a sensor like that, ISO is getting towards 800 are going to be pushing noise. 1600 is certainly going to be pushing boundaries, and you probably have noise even in the 400 ISO range in the skies and stuff, which we do see some evidence of it up there. So if we were going to print this larger or something, we'd want to address that noise in the skies, but the rest of it looks okay for a painterly kind of feeling. Nice image. I give this image a B+. Next image by Richard, and I really like this image. We definitely have repetition. We have all these curves, all of them, which combine to make this form. All right. As far as an image about repetition, I don't know. You know, it's definitely an object. It's a part of a flower, and so the image is a flower, not an abstract, but it is definitely dependent on that repetition of form, and it has a great feeling to this image. Zoom in on this, and there's no noise. It's sharp. We might have, you know, a little loss of contrast here due to a backlighting situation. A little bit of lens flare causing that, but I only think that adds to the feeling of this image here. It's plenty sharp. Let's take a look at the settings. And we've got a 40D with a very high ISO for a 40D. 130mm f8, probably nothing wrong with that. 1/250th with flash. Shutter speed will be adequate without the flash. Flash is on. That can only help. Add a little bit of front lighting, maybe fight some of that backlighting a little bit, and lighten up this image overall for this high key kind of feeling. All the tones are above mid or above, giving it a high key image. And that was intentional. It's obvious this was all intention. Oh, a couple things that may be of interest is even though the ISO is 1600, the noise is very low. And that's for two reasons. One is because he used flash, and the other is because it's a bright day. You can get away using a higher ISO on a bright day in good light than you can in low light. The light's just stronger. There's a stronger signal to noise ratio with strong light, so you get less noise. The other thing the ISO 1600 has done has reduced the amount of flash the flash is going to put out. So the high ISO makes the exposure in this area less dependent on the flash, causes the background to blow out, and so we don't get that flash feeling. I can't really see where the flash contributed a lot, except maybe possibly filling in the shadow areas down in here where these little bulbs are, or whatever they are. So the flash is very minimal due to the high ISO. So excellent image. As far as a repetition image, a repetition of form, you know, I don't know. To me, it's a flower, but as far as an image goes, I give this an A. I would definitely be happy with this image in my portfolio. It's just really cool. All right, next image. Here we have an image by Peter. And again, we're in the repetition. We've got the little flowers repeating, following the stem. For me, the image is a little backwards on the depth of field. I would like this area to be sharpest and for it to fade out going that way instead of the opposite, which is what we have. I really feel like because the bee's there and the flower's there and it's different than all our repetitions, I kind of feel like this is the subject here and it's too close to the edge. To me, it's a near miss. As a repetition image, it's a near miss. As an image overall, it's a near miss. I would like this a little more interesting composition, and perhaps maybe if this whole stem was going this way across, and then our bee was kind of sitting here at this angle, it would work a little better. I don't know. But I really want this bee in focus. Let me get rid of those. All right, let's take a look at the settings. We've got 1/100, ISO 200, f2.8, 2470 lens. f2.8 is not in the diffraction, but then again, it's probably not the sharpest setting, and it's certainly not going to be the most depth of field. With a camera with this many megapixels, you have a choice of backing up, shooting this looser to increase your depth of field for any given aperture, and then cropping in, assuming you have enough pixels remaining to display it the size you want. I would expect a low noise, and it's not bad. We've got a bit of color noise kind of pixelation thing going on in the sides here. That could be processing, could just be the megapixels. Yep, I got some a little bit of odd color edges here. Some of that's going to be, if this was recorded in a JPEG or edited in a JPEG 8-bit mode, kind of is going to get this kind of banding down here. It's not, I would not expect that from a raw file here. And some, looks like maybe some chromatic aberration to the edges and things, which could also be improved perhaps with stopping down the lens a little bit. Obviously it's an attempt to have an adequate shutter speed with a focal length, and that's certainly important. Overall, I'm going to give that image a C, near miss. Alright, this is my image, and it is about repetition of form and shape. I don't know what it says to anyone else. Every time I see it, I see a bunch of crosses. It's a monotone image. It's more in the abstract realm. So as far as an image about shape and repetition, I think this is a very good example. However, I don't think it's a particularly great image, partly because it doesn't have anything to say, and that's kind of the way abstracts are as well. It's tough to get both of those together. And also, if we look closely in here, there's areas of noise, good amounts of noise. If you look in here, right in this area, it gets very grainy, pixelated. If we look in the background up in here, the whole background is grainy. All this doesn't hurt so much because it's a monotone image. There really isn't a reason for it. If we look in this area, you don't see it at all, and that's because in areas of high detail like this, high fine detail, noise can actually contribute to a sense of sharpness, or over sharpening even. This kind of has that feeling to it, and that's all my fault due to processing. The reason there's a hard transition in the noise levels is my attempt to remove noise from the areas I could, and then fade it off along with the transition into sharpness, which causes this hard transition characteristic. So not great in that aspect. We look down here, it's a Nikon 1V2, which is a small sensor, and the problem is the ISO. I left the ISO at 400 and I shouldn't have. Excuse me. I was in manual for this, and I was on a tripod type thing, and there's just no reason for the ISO to be there. I missed it. That's where it was set before, and the image suffers for it. Overall, I'd give this image B-. As a repetition image, I give it a B. Technical issues take it down a little bit, but I'm happy enough with it. Depends on the size I needed it printed at, whether or not it would be usable, printed and displayed. Alright, we have an image by Karen, and again we have plenty of repetition. We have all the blocks in the structure here. We've got these blocks, we've got these blocks, we've got these blocks, we've got the window frames. So we've got lots of repetition here, and but what makes this image interesting is the light. It's always about light with photography, and interesting light's better than bad light or no light, and that's really what makes this image what it is. In the end though, there's not a lot to look at. It certainly doesn't speak to me. Maybe something of more interest, maybe more of it, maybe less. I don't know. Let's take a look at the settings here. Low ISO, f/22. I don't really know that there would be a reason to be at f/22. Especially with a long 11-second shutter speed. I think because 22 is going to be putting it into diffraction, losing some detail that you could otherwise have. So I think that f8 probably would have given enough depth of field. I have no idea what the distance to this was. Obviously it was done, used a tripod because there's no flash, and long shutter speed, so that's done well. And image wise, at least at the size it enlarges to here, I don't see any real issues as far as sharpness, noise, or anything like that. So the image was well taken, well seen. It kind of lacks in subject matter or a message. So I give this image a C+, C. I want to like it more. It's got great, interesting light, but it's just not quite enough for me. All right, another one of my images, and I'm happy with this image. This is a B+ for me. It still has some issues. One really bothers me is this little guy right here is out of place. And I have retaken this image to address that, but this guy's just not in line where he's supposed to be. He's stepped out of line. You can look at this image and feel that there's not enough depth of field. The guys in the back here aren't really sharp. The guys up front aren't sharp. It's a matter of taste. I like the front being a little out of focus, but I think this area here could stand to be in better focus. Might be just a touch dark on this side here, but otherwise I'm happy with this image. And like I said, I have retaken it several times. Like I said, I give this image a B. As far as a repetition image, it has plenty of repetition. We have the whole layouts repeated left to right. We've got all these squares of the board. We've got all these pawn pieces in rows. So it definitely has repetition in form and shape, but I think it's gone beyond being an image about repetition, and it's more about the pawn piece in the center and the chess, I guess. I don't know. So as far as a repetition image, I don't know, B-, somewhere around there. All right. Image by Jason. And I like this image more than I think I would typically. Plenty of repetition. You know, we got all the small rectangles. Then you got them in larger rectangles. You got it in even larger rectangles. So we have plenty of repetition. Then we've got this large rectangle and this smaller rectangle. So we've got plenty of repetition, and then of course there is the pipes themselves there, which seem to be the subject. The lighting's fairly hard, casting kind of hard shadows, and this is pushing towards an abstract image. Let's take a look at settings down here. Let's look at this large. I don't know, it looks like it could probably be sharper. Not exactly sure why. Okay, small sensor. Well, that's an APS sensor. f4 on an f1.4 lens, so stop down, that should be plenty sharp. Plenty of shutter speed. So maybe processing. Maybe the subject itself just didn't have that much detail. It's obviously not a macro type shot to maximize. And could be the flatter lighting getting rid of some of this, but it is definitely from this side because you can see it bringing out the texture in the wall, and that's great. So overall, I don't know, C+, B-, somewhere in there. Kind of falls just a touch short for me on connection. Here we have an image by Ross and his rubber duckies. And First thing I notice is on my screen it is very saturated. It's the reds, you can't even see my pen. The reds look to me to be clipped. The yellows are very dark. The yellows I don't mind as much as the red. Let's take a look at something here. And here we've got reds above 250. And if I actually change this to source, and we're going to find they're in the 255 area. I'm sure that if we were to go and look at the histogram on this, the reds would be completely on the right side there, blown out. So that's, to me, just a bit problematic, and will probably be problematic in a print as well. I like the clutter jumbo. I think I'd like this image a little more if this guy right here, that guy right there was sitting out in the middle, a little more separation, a little more three-quarter view, make him a little more a strong point of focus in amongst all the others, would make this image stand out a little better. Kind of like this guy, but that guy's just a little too far out of whack and a little too bit more, he's smaller, a little more jumbled in with the others, that he doesn't quite work as the point of focus either. So we're kind of missing a strong point of focus in this, but it's real close. Settings wise, like Pentax K3, I'm pretty sure that's an APS type camera, 21-1400. I don't know if there's a need to be at ISO 400 due to having this much shutter speed with not needing flash and being able to stop down, so it probably wasn't a need to be there. I don't know that it's hurt the image at all. It doesn't blow up to a very large size for me to be able to say. There's a little, looks like color noise in this area here in the water, and as I keep saying, the water is kind of bluish, and it's somewhat characteristic of all camera sensors to get some color noise and blues. So overall, good image. I would give this a B minus. I think with some just toning down of the reds and maybe lightening the yellow a little bit, and maybe a little bit of noise correction there, and this image would move up a bit to B plus area, BB plus. Right, here we have an image by Adrian, and I really like this image. It is about repetition of shape and form. Not only do we have the individual nails, but then we also have the curves, and they create a flowing line to lead the eye through the image. So strong view, strong composition, and it's abstract, but it's not entirely abstract. There's enough here that I know that this is a coil of nails for a nail gun or something of that sort. And you know, that could mean whatever to you, industry or creation, building, whatever. But this has more of an emotional impact to me while still being abstract. So I think this is an excellent image for the theme and otherwise. Use of depth of field to focus the attention to one area is excellent, and the positioning of the point of focus is good as well. You know, it could have been a little better if it was down here, or a little more transition of it Might have been better, might not have been better, I don't know. We got some noise in the background here, color noise. ISO noise is black and white. Color noise is colored. Looks similar but colored, but generally you can take out a lot more color noise with, you can be a lot more aggressive with color noise reduction without really hurting image sharpness or image quality. So that might be something to look at. Obviously some of that noise is coming from the ISO 2500, f2.8, 42mm, 150. Shutter speeds pushing boundaries for hand holding, required a heck of a lot of ISO, causing us some noise issues. Really not a reason for that, being that this is obviously a stationary subject, so any kind of support, tripod, bag, whatever that you could have stabilized the camera with, used a long shutter speed, keeping the ISO low, that would have been better. There's no doubt about it. Overall, I'll give this image a B+. Let's make it a B-. I think it'd be a B+ without the color noise, pushing towards an A. But with the color noise, primarily due to the ISO, I downgraded just a little to a B-, but well seen, well shot. We have another image by Jason, and again, repetition of form. Here we've gone into an abstract approach, and I like the image. We've got the repeating squares, but we've got 6 of them that are different, creating a little different pattern and interest. And we've got a black and white conversion, which goes towards the abstract kind of feel or approach. Fits the theme. I would give this image a B-, I think. C+, B-. It's missing something, and maybe the processing could be a little harder. Maybe this could handle a little more, I don't know, grit. Something to make it a little more dramatic. It feels a little bit flat to me. And maybe a little more focus as far as subject goes. I don't know. But it's just missing a little bit as far as me connecting with this image as such. Offhand, I don't see any issues with noise or sharpness, anything like that. So it was well taken. Okay, APS, stop down, ISOs low, and tons of shutter speed. So I don't see any issue with the settings. Okay, like I said, B- in that area on that image. MJ submitted this picture of curls, and we certainly have a repetition of the curls in the hair. And I want to like this image more than I do, and I think the reason it's missing just a little bit is this image is actually a little too focused for me. It's a child's hair. I'm 99.9% certain of that, and I think if it was a little more obvious that it was a child's hair, I would like the image better. Now, that might take it more towards being a picture of a child and less a picture of shape and form, but I would connect more with it, and really that's what photography is about. So just as far as curls go, I don't really connect with it that much. Nice, bright, happy kind of feeling to this image. Plenty sharp, no noise. I see no issues with anything there. D3200, 35mm, f8 stop down for sharpness, lower ISO, plenty of shutter speed, well taken. I give this image a C, I guess. Maybe a C+. It's well done. We have an image by Karen, and I really like this image. It's abstract. We do have the repetition of shapes. It's black and white conversion, which goes towards that abstract. Oh, I'm assuming it's a black and white conversion. I could be entirely wrong. It appears to be a cup or a lantern shade or something like that, where the light's on the inside. So we get this abstract of here. That's convenient. We've got here where the light's shining through there's the opening, so it's black. Background's black. We get the bright white here, and then we get the opposite effect down here where light's coming through at us. So we get this diamond lit up, and this area is black because it's being blocked by the shade. So that's really cool. Well seen. I like that this part's out of focus and larger. It's not too out of focus, but it's enough that it doesn't really over-compete with the rest of the image. So overall, it feels well balanced as far as compositionally and content. So I think this is a very strong image. I don't know what it says, but I do connect with this image a little more, and it's probably just due to the light. ISO 500, f/18, 55 millimeter. I mean, obviously the working distance was very low, very short for this, because we have very little depth of field for f/18. f/18 is pushing it a little bit for an APS sensor into diffraction, but really this is abstract enough that it doesn't matter. There's not that much detail in the image to start with, so losing a little bit of it's not going to hurt anything. And if you needed it to get enough depth of field, use it. Overall, well taken, well done. I give this image a B. I don't know why, but I give it a B. Alright, here we have a picture by Xian. We do have repetition of form. We've got lots of squares in this image. We've got the big windows, we've got the smaller panes, we've got the ladder rungs, we've got the framing, and we've even got this frame working as a nice frame for what it could potentially be the point of focus of this image. And it kind of works one of two ways. Either this guy needs to not be there so that we're only dealing with shapes and repetition, or this guy is kind of going to be our subject because he's so prominent. Because of that, he's a little towards the edge of the composition. I think this area over here, we have competing shape, and we have dark on light in this whole area here, which makes this area a little bit of a distraction. Particularly down here, we have pretty much stark white against stark black. So this whole section over here, this whole section on over here, isn't really adding to this image in my opinion. So I think it's slightly different composition. It kind of doesn't look like there's anything more going that way that would be a benefit. So this image might have been stuck to a square orientation, or maybe a portrait orientation if we went more up or down with the composition. Or maybe we just stayed with a square composition. If that's what works, that's what you use. Exposure wise, the whites aren't too bad. I mean, they're white. They're down in that they're actually mostly less than the 240 range that I like to see whites. We do this. I shouldn't be in native values. I should be in sRGB. Look in here. Not too bad. This certainly feels like it's clipped. And the only reason for that is because this is light against dark. So exposure wise, for the rest of the image, I think it's all very good. I can't imagine there's going to be an issue with noise with this. It's such a bright scene. I even like the shadows of the form working in this area. Let's take a look at the settings. 1/3/20th f5 ISO 100. Good job keeping the ISO down there. Still left a ton of shutter speed. f5, I don't know what the lens was. f5 might not have been the sharpest aperture. Might have been able to use a sharper aperture, but I don't see that it hurt this image at all. I think just a little different composition and maybe a little different pose on this guy. Maybe if he was actually standing up, scraping and throwing a hard silhouette shadow against the wall himself. So just a little bit of timing. So a little bit of composition, a little bit of timing. I think would have moved this image up quite a bit. As it is, I would give it a B-. I would probably keep it. It's pushing C though. Different composition, a little bit of different timing, and I think this could easily have been pushed into an A level image. So well done. Marcy, we have a ladder on a fence, and it has a lot of repetition, but it's a ladder. And a ladder hanging on a fence isn't very interesting, at least not to me. Lighting's flat. Looks to be an overcast day, which typically is better than hard lighting, but it hasn't done anything to bring out the textures in the rungs or anything like that. So just a miss for me. Take a look. That's just depth of field. Fairly shallow depth of field. I don't know. Leading lines kind of lead me to the back fence there and out of the image where there's nothing really to see there either. Settings 35, 180, ISO 100, f5, 28-72.8, 28-75. Oh, not familiar with that lens. Probably could have gone to f8. Could have gone a little higher on the ISO to accomplish it. 180's marginal for hand holding for pretty much anybody most of the time without image stabilization. But I don't see that it hurt the image in particular. I just might have been able to do a little better. For me, it's a C. It's just a ladder. All right, we have an image by Mark, and we got bike frames. I like the find. I like the view. I took a little bit to find this image, and it's an interesting image. Kind of on the abstract, we're looking at the bicycle frames, not as bicycle frames as such, but as frames, but not frames for anything of use. I'm looking back here at some stuff that's out of focus, but not out of focus enough that I don't want to know what it is. I can kind of tell what it is, but I can't really tell what it is, and so it's this area just doesn't quite work for me. I don't know what to do as far as that goes. I might be tempted to take this image and remove all this stuff here. It'd be a heck of a lot of work, but I might be tempted to do that to make this a great image. This cracks me up right there. I don't know if it's obviously it's not intentional, it's not, but savage. That's what I think of about bicycle racing. It just sounds painful. Oh yeah, that's probably wrong. Sorry. All right. I like the use of depth of field. I like the center bike there is in focus better than the one up front. Causes me to look through into the depth there. I'm going to give this one a C+, B. I wish there was the background. Like I said, I would be tempted to do a lot of editing work to try to get this up to a B plus A image, and in reality it probably wouldn't have been worth it. Well seen, well captured. Let's see what the settings are. 44, 180, 2.8, 140. ISO, shutter speed, focal length, that all works. f2.8 works for the depth of field, and that's probably more important than critical maximum sharpness anywhere as far as this image goes. So well taken. All right, here we have another image by Xi'an. It's called Foxglove, and again we do have repetition of form. We've got the posts. Making nice repetitions. They also create rectangles of space between them. We have rectangles here. We've got repeating shadows. So we've got plenty of repetition. The boards, I can keep going. There's lots of it. And this is kind of similar to the Peter's Pier image, in that we've got all this repetition, and all these shapes are creating leading lines. We've got the reduction in size as it goes in, creating a feeling of depth and making you want to follow there. Same thing's going on here. So we've got a lot leads me back to here, and that here is kind of lacking. So I don't know what you could do with this. You could try to blow this out, then you'd lose a lot of this interesting lighting and shadow play stuff. So I don't know that would have worked better. You can always clone it out, paint it out kind of stuff in post, but I don't know that would work better. You compose this differently and just eliminate that part. Maybe have more focus on just this area, maybe include a little more on that side, and eliminate pretty much all this over here, and I would be able to move the focus and keep it over here where we want it, or because going out there is just not doing anything for me. So the image is called Foxglove. This is an area of interest, and I think if we'd focused more on that and kind of done our best to eliminate that, maybe we could have even just left some of it. We could leave some of it and still be better off. I don't know. There's something there. It's a near miss here. Just all the lines leading me out into this area of no interest. All right, let's take a look at settings. 55, 100, 100, 4.5. Yeah, I don't see an issue with anything technically going on, and I don't really see an issue with anything as far as sharpness, noise, etc. goes. You'd use a smaller aperture for a little more depth of field if you wanted to. I don't think that would have really helped this image as such. So, near miss. I give this image a C+. Alright, here we have another image by Adrian. And I like this image. It definitely have repetition. We have it broken up with another series of repetition of form. But it doesn't really quite do anything for me. It's a near miss. Settings wise, I don't see anything of issue. 2.8 is not going to be the sharpest, but 1/60th is pushing boundaries. I think I would push the ISO up on this one. IS was probably used, but I would probably push the ISO so I could stop down a little bit and have a lens at a sharper aperture. It seems sharp enough. But I'm going to kind of step outside the norm here, and I'm going to pull up another image of yours. This one. This is the same subject, more abstract, much more interesting in my mind, and it's because of the lighting. Light hitting this from an angle has caused the different panels to light up at different textures or colors, levels of brightness, and it just creates a much more visually interesting image. And I connect more with it, and it's just because of the light. It doesn't really say anything more to me as such. You know, I don't see a message here or anything like that, but the light creates a feeling, and I connect more with this image than I do with this image. And it's exactly the same tiles, and it's all about the light. So this image I give a C. It's just, I don't find it that interesting. Well seen, I mean, you found all the repetition and that kind of stuff, but this image, I give a B. And it's all about the light. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and check the settings here. Oh, I already did that. 2.8. Yeah. C on this one. I wish you'd submitted the other one so I could have been more positive. Alright, here we have another image by Mark, and this is interesting. We've got boards, and somehow I'm 90.9.99% certain that these are all shadows that have just managed to fall right where you would want them, which is really cool. And then you've got this one shadow at a diagonal. So this is very well seen. I don't know if it was just seen. I mean, there took some positioning and maybe timing, maybe even the light was created. I don't know, but it took something, at least luck, for it to line up like this, and that's kind of cool. Definitely repetition, abstract, interesting lighting. I don't know what I'd do with an image like this. I'm kind of that way with all abstract images. I don't know what it says to me either, but I like the image. I connect better with it, and I would, just on that basis, I would give it a B. Maybe a B minus. I don't know. Doesn't look like there's any EXIF. I don't know why. Well, someone said if you refresh it, but I'm afraid to refresh because it'll throw my search out of whack. Doesn't look terribly sharp. Not sure why that would be. The smaller size, it doesn't hurt, but there's certainly plenty of light here that I would think you'd have adequate shutter speed, low enough ISO, you'd be able to stop to a sharper aperture. And if not, it's a static subject. Use a tripod or whatever else. Or maybe it's noise reduction. I don't know. Can't tell you. It could be sharper. Well done. Well seen. MJ, I love this image, and it's another one that's about light. This, to me, looks to be textured metal, kind of that embossed aluminum tread type metal, and it's the light that's causing this. The light's coming from this angle up here to the left. The light's coming from this way, so it's reflecting off these raised areas, creating shadow on that side. And it's coming down along the length of these so that they become more uniform on the two sides as far as color goes. Changing the shape a little bit, changing the color a little bit, and creating a lot of interest in this image. And so it's abstract, perhaps a little too abstract. I feel like the use of a shallow depth of field is good, but the positioning of our area of focus is too far to the edge here. I would want this area of focus to be about here. You know, I'm not a stickler for the rule of thirds or anything, but if there's only going to be one area of focus, I feel it always works better closer to the middle, or maybe even in the middle. So, because essentially I hit the area of focus and interest to start with, and the rest of this is just repetition. It's good, I like it, but it's too far off. It kind of loses its value because it's so far over there, and I've already seen the part that's sharp. Maybe we flipped it so that I went through all the out of focus before I got to the focus part. I don't know. I just think that the composition with the depth of field could be shifted for a slight improvement on this image. Alright, settings wise, 200, f8, 80, 35. I don't see issues there anywhere. Well, excellent. I would not be surprised if this was lit with flash from the side, but it says not, which would mean it would be manual flash, or just that's the way the ambient came through a door opening or something like that. Well seen, well taken. I don't know if I gave that one a grade. I would give that a B minus. I'd give it a B plus with a little composition shift. Alan. All right. Wow. It doesn't look sharp at all. Small image. I don't know. Is it a crop from a hard crop from another image? For me, it's out of focus, and I can't get beyond that really. F13, 1/4 second with a 30 millimeter ISO 3200. You know, the exposure seems hot to me. Everything seems to be on the bright side all the way around. That's not helping. So I don't know if you tried to get away with hand holding this using image stabilization. I kind of feel you must have, because it's not sharp. So for this image, at least, it needed a tripod, reduced ISO, maybe a reduced aperture in order to get the shutter speed up if we didn't use a tripod. But you know, static subjects, is really no reason for it, and the exposure needs to come down. This image is a D. The killer is first and foremost focus. I can't find anything that really I can settle on. Another one by Alan, and this is very interesting. This is created, you know, and I don't have a problem with that. I like the repetition of a pattern of the coins themselves, but also the way that it creates leading lines in here that bring me to the center subject. I think that's interesting. I think if I were going to do this, I'd probably be a little more anal and maybe have all these be heads everywhere, or just all these are tails and this is the head. You know, I don't know. So I'd have tails leading to the head in focus, tails, 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 and then these would all be heads in this area. I know that's a lot, but if you're going to go through it, you might as well play with it some more. Exposure wise, it seems decent. A little hot up over here. A little, I guess this is window light or something to that effect, because it's coming from this upper corner and it's causing these coins in this area to have a loss of detail, kind of flat, whereas over here, where it's kind of falling off and hitting more at an angle because they're on a downward slope, and so is the lights on a downward slope, so it's kind of glancing on these a little more, or it's enhanced the detail in these coins down here. So a little more control of the lighting, so there was more side lighting, or to bring out more detail, or more evenly bring out the detail throughout, would be good to even this image out a little bit. Let's take a look at settings. All right, f10, 23, 1/5 of a second, ISO 400. Well, whatever you did different for this image has helped. It's sharper, still tiny. I know a lot of people recommend don't put anything on the web bigger than 800 or whatever. And if that's the choice, it's fine. I do think that the depth of field might be a little shallow or a little off, because it seems to be a little sharper in this area than it is in this area. But it's certainly not an aperture setting. f10, 23mm, that shouldn't be a problem. The ISO is low enough. It's still the shutter speed's on the slow side. So either you got a little luckier this time, or you used a little more stability than the previous image. Really, you could use any settings you wanted to for this, because it's a static subject. Get a tripod, set it up, you can do whatever you want. Alright, I give this image a C. C pushing a C+. Alright, Carol, we have an image, stamens of a flower. Don't know what kind of flower it is, actually. I've seen them before, but I don't know. It's interesting. I think maybe it needs to be tighter. Take it a little further out of the flower aspect and more into the repetition. That might require a square composition, which I generally don't like square compositions. But if we just had that area, we would have the repetitions of the petals framing the repetition of the stamens, all framing that center pistil, and I think it would work better as a repetition image, less as of a flower image. It's in that kind of in-between range where it's not quite a macro, it's more of a detail shot. I would kind of like a little more uniformity, I guess. So the shadows in these few here, I would probably lift those up some anyways. I like the shadows in these, so I wouldn't bring them up, you know, always to where they're flat, but I'd probably bring those up a bit. And let's take a look at settings. Well, actually, let's take a look at this up here. Yeah, completely blown up here. But there in the corner, it's completely blown. A little distraction, but like I said, the square composition would get rid of that. If not, we could always tone that down with dodging burning. It wouldn't have any texture. We could give it a color rather than the gray that it would go to. Something to go with this, I guess. Greenish. To go along with the color of the flower. But I think the better choice is changing the overall composition of shape. Settings wise, Fuji X100S, that's an APS type sensor. 5.6 is fine. 1125 for 23mm, 200 ISO is probably low enough to not be a problem. And if we look in here, we don't really have any problems. I think, yeah, we don't really have any problems. I might have preferred a little more depth of field in this image. So I might have stopped down a little further, and you had the room to do that if you wanted to, but it's not absolutely necessary. It's a choice. I give this image a B. I guess I give it a B minus, with the potential to be a strong B. Alright, and here we have a image by Joki, and definitely have repetition, form, and again, because we have this repetition that's decreasing in size, we get those leading line characteristics that kind of go like this. Alright, pen, draw. Right, give the leading line characteristics, which is going to cause my eye to go back into the image. And unfortunately, this image gets worse the further it goes as far as subject or focus, because the strongest area of that is in here. So I think a lower angle, focusing on this, would probably be better, or maybe more of a sidewards angle, to where we didn't get such strong leading lines from the convergence, causing me to look further and further. Or even if we had perhaps gone back here and we took this one, moved it off a little bit off by itself and put somebody in it or something, it's where all those leading lines are leading me to something. It would be better, but as it is, it's a near miss. I like the light. I like the evening sun. It's a near miss. I give it a C as it stands. I think there's a B image in there, setting wise. 7300 f4, 5.6 at f11, so stop down, but not too much. Got plenty of shutter speed for the. Oh no, you don't. Oops, sorry there. I thought that was 1/25th, and that's 1/25th. So let's see. I'm gonna guess you use a tripod. Good job, because it looks sharp. ISO is low, so we don't have any noise issues. So I wouldn't complain about anything there. Near miss, C as it is, potential B, and we are at the end of this month's critique. Well done. I hope everything I've had to say was taken as intended to be helpful, and I will see you again next month. Thank you.